Pre-Calculus, Section 1.7, Day 2 Notes, Part 2. So next, we're going to look at a picture and we're going to try to find an inequality that describes the set. Okay, so when we look at our first graph here, we can see first of all that we have open circles around -6 and +6, and our shading is on the ends. So right away, let's think about where the center is, and this one's an easy one, right? We know that the center is 0, okay? So that tells us that if our center is 0, -6 and +6, those are both 6 units away from 0, so this is going to be something about the absolute value of x and a distance of 6 units, right? Because from here to here is 6, and from here to here is 6, distance-wise. So we could write this as the absolute value of x, and then something with 6. Now, we need a symbol. Since this is an or picture, our shading is on the ends, is this going to be greater or less than? Well, if it's an or, it's a greater. And since our circles are opened, it's not greater than or equal to, it's just greater than. Okay, now I want to point something out because this is going to become an issue in future problems. It's important to note that the center here is at 0. So another way that we could write this is x minus 0, the absolute value of that, is greater than 6. Because when our center is not at 0, it's going to be x plus or minus a value inside of our absolute value bars. And you'll see that on our next example, okay? So what we're going to do first on number 2 is we are going to find the center, then distance to end points, because that's all information that we need. So if you think about 1 and 15, the center value that's right in the middle of 1 and 15 is 8. And it's 7 units from 8 to 15. And it's 7 units from 1 to 8. Okay, so that tells us that inside the absolute value, we're going to have x minus 8, because 8 is the center of our graph. And then the absolute value distance is 7. So now we just have to figure out our symbol. Since our shading here was in the middle, that tells us that this is an and goes with the symbol less than. And since we have closed circles, we are going to have less than or equal to 7. Okay, so just kind of pointing out here that this number ends up over here, and this number ends up right there. And the same thing over here. The 0 was there, and this distance that they are from 0 is right there, okay? All right, so now we're going to try to translate words into algebra. It says a phrase describing a set of real numbers is given. Express the phrase as an inequality involving absolute value. All real numbers x less than 3 units from 0. So the hint here is make a picture, okay? Make a graph that satisfies the statement. So we're thinking about all real numbers that are 3 units away from 0. So it sounds like our center is 0. So we're looking at all numbers that are less than 3 units from 0. So here's 3 units from 0 to the right. Here's 3 units from 0 to the left, okay? Now it doesn't say less than or equal to, it just says less than. So to me, that means open circles. And if we're just thinking about all the numbers that fall in that range that are less than 3 units from 0, then our shading is between these two values. So now that we have the picture, we should be able to take the picture and write the actual absolute value inequality. So once again, we know our center is at 0, so it's going to be x minus 0 inside the bars. We know that our distance from 0 is 3 units. This is an and statement with open circles, so it's going to be a less than. All right, one more. All real numbers at least 6 units from 4. So that tells us, for our picture, 4 is our center, And if we're 6 units away from 4, we could be, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We could be at 10, or 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. We could be there, okay? Because if we're at least 6 units from 4, then we're at least at 10 or at -2, but we could be greater than 10 and we could be less than -2. So this picture is going to be an or picture. It's that at least right there. Here we had that less than 3 units. Okay, so you really have to pay attention to what the words mean for the picture. But now that we have the picture, we can write the absolute value inequality. We know our center is 4, so it's going to be x take away 4, right? And then we know that we are 6 units away. And since this is an or statement, it's an or picture, so it's going to be an or statement with closed circles, it's got to be greater than or equal to, okay? And I want to make a little note here, because for all of the examples that we've had, this number right here was always x minus whatever the center was, but the center of our graph was always a positive value. What if the center of our graph is -7? Well, that number there is always opposite in sign of the center number. Okay, so if our center number was -7, then we would see the absolute value of x minus -7, which would be x plus 7. Okay, so it always looks like it's opposite of what it is. Okay, and then I also wanted to just help you out here by writing a couple things down. If you see the words at least, that's going to be greater than or equal to. If you see more than, that's just going to be greater than. If you see at most, that's going to be less than or equal to. And if you see less than, that's just going to be less than.